If you're like me, and if you really enjoy quick service, aka fast food, drive-through, I won't say the name of the place, Taco Bell, then depending on how much you have, you may feel a little bit of pain in the abdominal area, and next thing you know, oh, is that an appendicitis I have? Could that actually happen? What happens when a patient has appendicitis? Oh, you have to have your appendix taken out, an appendectomy. So, welcome to the Paul Chandler Show, everyone. I'm your host, Paul Chandler. This is also our first episode of Season 2 and our 100th episode of the show. This is also the first show on our new set. So, a little bit different, a little bit the same, but brand new set that we have here. And in this episode of the show, we'll be coding the appendectomy. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So in this episode of the show, we're going to be coding appendectomies. Now, we don't have a lot of codes that we have in the procedure book, the CPT book, that can deal with appendectomy. However, though, the guidelines that we have for those few codes can get us tripped up sometimes when we're coding. So as far as coding appendectomies, we can have the example of code 44950 with modifier 52. Or standard just 44950, and that's it with no modifiers. Or the possibility of 44950 with the add-on code 44955. We also have the possibility of 44960 and 44970. So taking a few moments and looking at these different code options and see when we would use either one, or depending on, do we need to use the add-on code as well. So first we have 44950 modifier 52. Remember, modifier 52, reduced services. So looking in the CPT book, 44950 appendectomy, so appendectomy, appendix, and then ectomy, excision, we're taking out the appendix. But again, the guidelines are the key here when we're coding appendectomies. So we're looking at 44950. Notice though, underneath we have the parentheses, incidental appendectomy during intra-abdominal surgery do not usually warrant a separate identification. If necessary to report, add modifier 52. So that's why we have an option of 44950 modifier 52, or just 44950, and that's it. So as far as the notes here, we'd use 44950 modifier 52 if the appendectomy is during an intra-abdominal surgery. So meaning, is there anything else that is going on? So if you think about it, when we're looking at the documentation, if it's incidental to it, that'd be a case of the doctor does not know that the appendix is inflamed, appendicitis. They open up the abdomen and then they see it, and it's like, well, we're already here, and if it's inflamed, then might as well just go and take it out. So, for example, the 44950, if it's incidental during an intra-abdominal surgery, so the patient is cut open, and they already see it inflamed, and like I said, to go and take it out instead of having the patient needing to come back and have the procedure done later. Well, then we have 44950 with no modifiers, and that's it. That's the standard appendectomy. And when I say the word standard, that would mean as in that's the main procedure that the patient's having that day. So that's the primary procedure. So I'll put on standard / primary. But then we also have, and this is one of the few times it's kind of rare, where when we use the add-on codes, it is due to not, for example, we're doing more square centimeters on the integumentary system. Or let's say we're doing cabbages for cardiovascular. We're doing more arteries or more veins. So remember, arteries and veins, more veins get the add-on codes. If we're looking at the add-on code 44955, in this case, it's also a KID code. So appendectomy, when done for indicated purpose at time of other major procedure, not as a separate procedure. And then does also have that lovely note, list separate in addition to the code for the primary procedure. So in that case, we still code it 44950 and the add-on code 44955 when this is a secondary procedure. Because oftentimes, depending on what organ it is, that let's say, for example, if the patient is having a kidney stone or a calculus removed, we have one code for a primary procedure, the removal of the kidney stone, and we have a secondary code option, but it's not an add-on code. This case, though, for appendectomy, it is. So we both use the code 44950, the standard, if you will, appendectomy code. We would just use that code and that's it if it's a primary procedure, as in that's the main reason why the patient's going in to having the surgery that day, is to have the appendix removed. But in this case, though, instead of using a different non-add-on code, for example, a different parent code or possibly a KID code, when it's a secondary procedure, here we still code it the primary code, the 44950, but do the add-on code 44955 to let us know that it is a secondary procedure. And like the guidelines state, that if we are coding it for as a secondary procedure with both these codes, again 44950 and the add-on code 44955, we also need to provide the information on what that primary procedure is. So now, what we mean by primary procedure and secondary procedure? Primary procedure, just like we have 44950 and that's it, that's the main reason why the patient is going to the OR that day. On the flip side, a secondary procedure, the patient is having another procedure done. So in this case, 44950 with the add-on code 44955 as a secondary procedure, the patient's having a different procedure. That's the primary procedure. So whatever that primary other procedure is, that's the main reason why the patient is going to the OR that day. And the patient may need an appendectomy, so they know that in advance. So then they'll oftentimes, depending if it's possibility, do a primary procedure and a secondary procedure. That way the patient's only put under once. And it doesn't matter if that primary procedure happens to be digestive system or a different organ system. Just as long as the patient can be put under, you can switch doctors between different surgeries, the primary and secondary. But notice though, we have the difference, 44950, modifier 52, if it's during an intra-abdominal surgery. So think of that as we don't know the patient needs it until they actually have their abdomen open. And the 44950 with the 44955 secondary procedure that they know in advance, they're having a different procedure done. Hey, while we're here, we'll go ahead and take out the appendix if it's needed for medical necessity on the patient. And then we do have the 44960 for ruptured appendix with abscess or generalized peritonitis. So at this case, the appendix is already ruptured and there is some type of another condition going on. Patient has an abscess or they have some type of peritonitis going on as well. So everything before it, 44950 with modifier 52, just 44950, or 44950 with the add-on code 44955, those top three codes, in this case the appendix is not ruptured. It is still contained, it's not popped yet, if you will. If they catch it after the fact, and the patient's going to be pretty much agony, pain at that point, then we'll do 44960 to let us know that the appendix that is being removed, unfortunately, is already ruptured at that point. Now we do have one more different code option that we can choose for appendicitis, and then the patient has the appendix removed for the appendectomy. Then we have 44970. And notice how that one is laparoscopy, surgical, appendectomy. So this one, in this case, it is a laparoscopic procedure. So we are using a scope, in this case, to go in and remove the appendix. And also with the description 44970, laparoscopy and surgical with appendectomy. Remember, since this is a surgical scope, we have the standard generic phrase, a surgical scope always includes a diagnostic scope. So in this case, if the doctor does a diagnostic scope first, then sees, yep, that appendix looks bad, we're going to take it out, then does a surgical laparoscopy to actually remove the appendix itself for the appendectomy, the diagnostic scope that the doctor first did is bundled into the surgical scope code, the 44970. So we'll only choose the one code option there. So you can see here that there's not a lot of codes that we have dealing with the appendectomies. Really only looking at 4 codes because the 44950 kind of counts in there 3 times. But just remember though, just the general overview that we have for the appendectomy codes, that if the patient is having appendectomy and if it's not discovered until after the patient's already been cut open during the intra-abdominal surgery, 44950 with modifier 52 for reduced services. Or if it's a primary procedure, that's the main reason why the patient is going to the OR that day. Just the standard 44950 code, no modifiers, no add-on codes. The add-on code would apply if it's a secondary procedure, and in that case, then the provider has to document what's the primary reason why the patient's going in the OR that day, what's the main procedure. Then, hey, while we're here, we'll go ahead and take out the appendix if it is needed. Then that'd be coded as the 44950, and then along with the add-on code 44955. And then we have, if the appendix is already ruptured, then at that point we'd code it as the appendectomy code 44960, just to clarify that yes, the appendix has ruptured and the ruptured appendix is the one that we're taking out. And the last option that we have, just to recap again, if it's laparoscopy, so it's done with endoscopic scope, doctor does a diagnostic scope, see what's going on. Yep, that appendix has to go bye, 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 and sync, kind of thing. Then they do the diagnostic scope, take that one out, retract it out, put the surgical scope in to remove the appendix. Then we'd only code the one surgical laparoscopy code, 44970. So, I guess part of the phrase, but in a nutshell, there's the appendectomy codes that provider will have to provide the surgery for patients if they have appendicitis and inflammation of the appendix. And I do thank you for watching all of this episode for the Paul Chandler Show. But just so you know, though, that for our month of January, so for the beginning of season 2, all of the Monday episodes, the different diagnosis codes that we are talking about, or the different procedure codes that we'll be coding on Monday, Monday's episodes, we'll be looking at how we code those procedures. Then on Wednesdays, we'll be using the Padzilla and actually showing you a surgical procedure being performed. So stay tuned for the episode for Wednesday this week, just in 2 days. We'll be using the Padzilla and showing you an appendectomy actually being performed. And I still have my appendix, so it's not going to be mine that we're going to be looking at. So that way then on Mondays, then we can see how the coding is done. Then on Wednesdays, we can look at the surgery itself on the lovely big Padzilla screen. And as it's going along, I'll be describing to you what the doctor's doing. That way, as coders and auditors, we can link having a picture, illustration, to what we see in the words. So again, since this is episode number 100 and the first episode of season 2 of the Paul Chandler Show, from all of us here, our cast and crew of the show, we do thank you for watching and welcome to season 2 and have an awesome rest of the day.